Following on from the previous episode where we talked about enterprise architecture for every timescale, we also want to look at enterprise architecture and how we do it over every possible scope and scale. Now that sounds perhaps a bit crazy, that everything across everywhere. Well, that's about the only way we'll stay sane if we're dealing with something that's very large scope or very large scale. We want to have consistency. We want to have the same methods or the same approaches used essentially everywhere. This supports fractality, the self-similar, the similar things being context independent, but we then add the context to it as we go along. So we want some of our tools to be context neutral so that they can help us find what the context actually is. And we want some other of our tools to be context specific so that they can help us find the content that we need to make it work in the real world. So what we're looking for, and what we did with tools like 5 elements, like this one here. 5 elements is a structure that allows us to work exactly the same way at every scope and scale by plugging in other tools as we go down towards the detail. But the basic pattern remains the same everywhere. So what we're looking for, as we've got in 5 elements, is recursive patterns that should work at every scale. And we can use those to test at the extremes to make sure that we've got the middle roughly right. So we've got really small scale enterprise architecture that works with, does it work right down, the same principles work right down at the microsecond, the sub-microsecond, the nanosecond, down at the level of individual chips inside individual processes inside individual chips. We also want to be able to scale all the way up to the really big picture enterprise architecture, up to the level of a planet or beyond. Because one of the things that this shows us is that the same principles that we're using for enterprise architecture for an organization can also help us look at what's happening at a global scale that highlights issues such as, well, to be blunt, there's no way to make a possession-based economy sustainable. There is no way to have infinite growth on a finite planet. These are constraints, as we looked at in one of the previous episodes. So we've got the same tools being used and the same methods being used at every scope and scale. This helps us translate cleanly across different contexts and connect things together so that things work together better and on purpose across the whole.